Acceptance, in my opinion, is the only way to healing things. If we're ashamed of it, we didn't heal it. We're still hiding it, either from ourselves or maybe from the world, and being scared that it becomes our limitation, because we're scared who's gonna find out. And then if they find out, well, what's the problem? Obviously, like I said before, we will think we're not enough, or no, someone's not gonna respect us or love us, or we're not gonna be deserving. So, but once we accept it, then we might know, yes, there might be still people who are not going to decide not to like us and judge us for it, but the right people will love us, yeah, and understand why and what happened, and yeah, we'll still be good enough and still be significant.
Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. Really excited to share a really important puzzle piece that both Anja and I really focus on a lot, which is helping people with awareness and the shame that people get after they become aware of things that they don't know. So let's have a chat about this, Anja. Welcome to Uncovered.
Hi guys. Hi, Jace. So shame is a really, really good topic. I think that, it's a part of everyone's lives because we all have shame. It's just some people are more willing to, talk about it, and some will hide and think that, there's nothing to be ashamed of, but though it's bullshit, because we all feel at times, that there are parts of us that we want to hide and we don't want anyone to see or know about. I wanted to start to talk about that. Shame is, in my opinion, shame is when we want to be hidden, when we want to isolate, disconnect, when we hide, when we want to stay a secret, we don't want to be exposed. So people who are struggling with wanting the exposure, there's shame. Yeah. And I spoke in a previous podcast about it, how I'm scared of exposure. And part of my why is definitely, for years I've been following that story. Oh, I'm not enough. Who's going to listen to me? I've got nothing to say, which is a shame of obviously not being enough, that like people who do share and expose and make a difference in the world. Yeah. So shame loves secrets, shadows, wants to hide, doesn't want anyone to know about us, or possibly about our mistakes or our faults or anything that we think it's wrong with us. And I believe that we're ashamed when we're believing that we're not lovable, we're not enough, we're not worthy, valuable, that things are missing, and we just want to stay hidden, because we don't believe that we're significant enough to expose or be out in the spotlight.
So we're going to talk about something specific here, though. Shame is one of those things where we can have our hidden chambers and all of those sorts of things that we don't want to share. Today's a little bit more about how we get a self-realization, and we go into that place where we thought the world was exactly how we thought it was, until one day, one of us, quite often with one of us, Anja, in the academy, we come and crack open the skin of what's really going on. And so what happens here, listeners, is that people become aware of something they never knew existed before we started showing them something new. Now, when this comes up, we have two choices. A lot of people who beat themselves up will feel shameful around their past experiences, and you can't really, people do it, but it doesn't make any sense, because a lot of the time there's this really awesome statement that I quite often talk about in the Bible. And the statement is, they know not what they do. And this can relate to you specifically, listeners, is to understand you didn't know what you were doing before we opened the door out to get you to see what you were doing in the first place. So naturally, people who are built on beating themselves up will look at their past and they feel shameful of all the choices that they have made without knowing that those choices were choices that they couldn't help at the time.
Yeah. So I think it's really important when we have that realization, and we can look back and go, oh my God, look what I've done, or the decisions or the actions we took, that, Jace, we're not going to go to that specific, but there's a topic that we talked about it, and you said, those people, when they realize what they've done, they go to suicide because they can't live with the shame. So a lot of the times when we're ashamed of something, or let's say there were people who, I remember stories of people who are sexually abusing people, and then the church found out, and then they were judged in that community, and they killed themselves because they could not accept that they would be judged. So then, obviously our way is looking at it with awareness and understanding, yes, that what the mistakes that we make are teaching us, they're helping us grow, they're helping us evolve. And the mistake actually is a mistake when we don't learn from it, if we repeat it, yeah? So, I think it's very important to understand where we were coming from and why we were doing what we were doing. Usually there's certain limiting beliefs that drive us, or a lot of the times, I had a session today with my client, and we'd figure out together that a lot of the times when that we make mistakes in the past is through desperation. Something's so missing inside of us, and we don't know how to functionally meet our needs. So we go to some resources or tools that usually we wouldn't, because we were desperate. And I think we all have parts of us that we, often make decisions through desperation. We don't believe we can have it easier or better, or so then we go, oh, that will do for us, yeah? And therefore, later on, when we see that we can do better or different, well, there's this shame that comes up, yeah? I think it's really important one thing that I see how to use shame is instead of using it as a toxic shame. So toxic shame would be that we believe, oh, because of what I've done, now I either stupid or unlovable or undeserving, or something like, instead of looking at what's wrong and missing with us, we can look into healthy shame. I believe allows us to be vulnerable, allows us to feel to accept forgiveness, and allows us to step into compassion and understanding. And healthy shame allows us to realize that we're humans. So it allows us to stay in touch with humility. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I talk about this in the Academy a lot around what you said is just bringing shivers to my spine. The reason why is our ultimate best self is sitting behind it. So I have this amazing meditation that I share in the Academy around shame, which talks about how your absolute brilliance is hiding behind shame. So there's toxic shame, as you said, which is the part of us that we don't want anyone to see. And then there's the opportunity of shame. And it's the expression of our true selves that's hiding behind it. Now imagine if we could use this in a way that could be helpful, right? So I'll give you a personal example of this. I was really, really shameful. I'm sure maybe some of you guys have not heard my podcast about myself, where I ended up in the psych ward in 2000. It took me, I'm not sure how long it was, Anja. It was probably about 15, 14 years, where I decided one day to let a whole bunch of people know about my past. So I wasn't expecting anyone to show up. I said I was going to invite people to show up half an hour before one of my classes. I think it was about 2012, 2013. And I said, I'm going to let people know some stories about my past that I've never said anything before. And I wasn't expecting anyone to show up, and everyone did. The class was completely full, and I was really, really surprised. And then I opened the doorway and the pathway about my past that had haunted me for years thinking that if I let everybody know that I'd been in a psych ward, I'd gone crazy, that no one would ever want to have anything to do with me as a helper of people. So I shared vulnerably, I shared openly. And what I found was people not only stayed with me, they had more empathy for me, they had more care for me, they had more love for me, simply because I shared some things that I thought I would just never tell anyone. I'd just hide away under the covers. And I knew quite a few people knew, but it was one of those elephants in the room that nobody spoke about. So that's the gift that you're talking about, Anja, is that opportunity where people get to express themselves in a way where honesty and vulnerability gives us that amazing opportunity to express ourselves in another way.
Yeah, I love that, Jace. So that's the thing is with shame. If there's nothing to hide, if there's nothing we're ashamed of, no one can hold anything against us. So it's only if we're hiding things, we'll be scared that someone might, know them or figure it out. But if we actually are accepting it, and because if you think acceptance, in my opinion, is the only way to healing things. If we're ashamed of it, we didn't heal it. We're still hiding it either from ourselves or maybe from the world, and being scared that it becomes our limitation because we're scared who's gonna find out. And then if they find out, well, what's the problem? Obviously, like I said before, we will think we're not enough, or someone's not going to respect us or love us, or we're not going to be deserving. So, but once we accept it, then we might know, yes, there might be still people who are not going to decide not to like us and judge us for it, but the right people will love us, and understand why and what happened, and we'll still be good enough and still be significant. But that's the thing, is if we're trying to hide things haunt us until we meet them and accept them.
And I think this is one of the biggest issues in the world today. If we're looking at business owners, we're looking at people in corporate, we're looking at every person walking down the street, there's a shameful story that people don't want to tell, right? And we're hiding it from view. And I don't know about you, Anja. I've been that person that has, I guess I have it written on my forehead, and you've seen
everything.
Is tell me every single detail of my haunted past, and just love me for it. And so I've been that person who's vaulted information from people that people have said to me and they've never told another soul. And I find that a really big responsibility sometimes, that people only tell me something. And then my goal with everybody is to show them that what they're hiding from is actually more important than what they're actually exposing themselves with. And this is what we get stuck with, especially in leadership, is that leaders quite often are too afraid to communicate their hidden information for a fear that people will leave them or they won't be respected. And this is a real challenge for leaders. The number of leaders that I've chatted to, and they've said, I can't say any of this to my tribe. I can't say or be any of this to my tribe. And they're having a meltdown. I'm like, so they just tell me, I reset them, and then they go off their merry way. And there's still this remnant of shame sitting inside of them simply because they've just told me, right? And they're still having to hide it from the rest of the world. So it's a really big challenge, I think, for all humans to learn how to be comfortable and vulnerable with their stuff. People who are shamed to masturbate, shamed to watch porn, shamed to that they've stole some potato chips from the shops one day. Whatever it is that you've done, or shame around the abuse that you might have received. There's got to be a better way that we can communicate this information, especially when we have this experience where we have a recollection, we have an understanding about what we're doing. So we have an opportunity. There's one choice: we can beat ourselves up, or we can use that second choice, which is to liberate our lives.
Beautiful. And also I was wanting to say, with shame, often is that people who will shame us or not be able to hold space or accept and understand our shame are going to be people who are shameful and projecting it onto us. Because if you think people who are unhealed and unaware will project or process their shame onto other people. Yeah, so they can't understand and accept and something that's a part of them, and they will see it in us and they will shame us for it. So often shame can be like passing the baton to someone, like you want to pass it on to someone, so you'll go and shame them for the very thing that that's missing inside of you. Yeah, so I think it's very important to know that as well, that, you know, and then there were stories, let's say, you know, about people who were secretly gay, would never admit because they were too ashamed or were scared of what that's going to look like for the environment or the community or the family. And then they would be very judgmental and shaming other gay people. So that's just one example, could be another thing. But like, you know, because then you figure out later, oh, they were the same thing, but they were trying to kill something that they couldn't accept or love inside of themselves in someone else.
Yeah, and I think this is really, really important, guys, is that whatever it is that's going on, whether you're having that projected, I've had a lot of people project their stuff onto me over the years, said stories about stuff about me that is just a blatant out and out lie, complete stories. And I find it really interesting that people would express stuff about someone that is absolutely not true. So when we always say this, and it is hard to understand, is that someone else's opinion of you is their opinion. So if you, let's say someone says something about you and you're triggered, then there's something that's locked inside of you that you've got to work on. And that's really, really important, because if people have said, I've had to host some people down who have said stuff about me, and they say, oh, I was so annoyed with so-and-so saying this about you. And it's like, that's their opinion. That's what they want to divulge. Even if it's not true, that's their problem. And the people who are trying to defend me are being triggered instead of me. So I think this is essential, guys, is that once you get some realization, what I want you to think about for you is that when you notice what maybe has happened in the past, then you're making decisions based on the past. Then once you get a realization, you've got two choices. You can beat yourself up from the past, or you can look at it as a step ladder to where you want to go. So I think what people do, Anja, you tell me if I'm wrong here, is that people who beat themselves up on the past, maybe they're holding on to their old imagery. They're not prepared maybe to let go of their past, so they feel ashamed, so then they can stay stuck. I don't know. It's just a bit of an idea that people might do, or they're not ready to step over to that other side of being able to feel comfortable around their past so they can make a different future.
I think a lot of the times when people can't forgive themselves and they're still living with the shame is because that shame affects how much trust they have in themselves. So I think it's important not to identify ourselves with what happened to us. Yeah, we are not our mistakes. Yeah, yes, we've made them, and yet at the same time we've experienced them, and therefore we could have regressed or progressed. Doesn't matter. But we are not our mistakes, and we're not what happened to us either. So and often I see that we identify ourselves with what happened to us instead of, well, I experienced it, I learned from it, and what did I learn? Did I, like I said before, did I progress? Did I regress? So I think it's really important to look back and think, okay, that's at least how I've learned to deal with it, you know, to go, okay, I've made a mistake, I feel bad about it, I feel ashamed. Well, what did I learn from it? And what am I going to do different next time? So then I know that this was that was price worth paying. So I think it's just really important to understand how did what we went through and what we're ashamed of benefited us to who we've become. And therefore, then it allows us to accept. Yeah, understanding allows us to accept, because if we haven't accepted it, again, we're going to want to hide it. Yeah, when we accept something, we're willing to show it or live with it, or and be okay with it.
100%. So let's dive into this a little bit. Maybe we could give a little bit of an example of shame, where you felt ashamed about something or something's happened. And then you've had a realization where you look back at your past and go, God, oh my God, that was really bad. But there's another path here where you've actually learned from feeling shameful. You've done some things that you could be really, really proud of. the type of person that you are, the way that you show up. So I'll give you a little bit of an example for this. For me personally, is that I was always I never felt good enough, right? I got shamed in front of my year 6 class. Everyone laughed at me. So what I did was I spent from year 7 to year 12 going to sick bay so I wouldn't have to do a talk in front of the class. I was that terrified after my first experience of standing up in front of the class, where the teacher shamed me in front of everyone, that I decided to hold back on anything at all. So I pretended I was sick. So I'd go to sick bay. Every time I was talking in front of the class, I'd be in sick bay. That was it. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a pathway here that I realized that, I couldn't cope in groups. And so I learned to be a really, really good listener. So really, really intent on listening and understanding human nature and people, simply because I wasn't functional enough and I felt too much shame to cope. And then when I realized I had to, I looked back and said, God, look at what you've done to yourself. I can see the asset that got created by that humiliation and shame that I had in the past.
Yeah, that's a cool story. See, so it's really important to understand that, that those shameful stories or the shameful feelings allowed you to change and become a different person. Because I, believe that we often learn through pain. There's something painful that happens. And then we can either be ashamed of it, or we can see that pain was showing us and teaching us about that something is really important to us and that we have to actually do something different. And if we've changed and actually commit to this new version of us, I think the price again was worth paying, no matter what sort of a mistake or pain happened in the past.
Yeah, and I think this is where you can look at it differently, can't you? Right, and it really comes down to an attitude around our past. Is that when we start getting some more realizations, we have a choice. We can write the book of our past based on the shameful feelings that we have, or we can write a new book that actually has new pages in it. So the question I want to ask you listeners is, what way do you want to write your book, right? You all have shameful experiences that maybe you can't get past. So one thing I know that's really important for you is to make sure that you give yourself that permission to tell somebody what's happened. And there's a real caveat to this. Make sure you tell a person that's not going to enable you to be stuck. There are plenty of people who do this. They feel sorry for you, or they pity you, or they worry about you. These sort of approaches actually make problems for the human psyche. So you've got to learn to be able to meet the people in a way. So if you're a helper, make sure that you're not enabling people by feeling sorry, worrying about them and those sorts of things, because it's going to make more damage than you realize. And I realized this from working as a therapist. I'd quite often be working with people and I'd be wanting to enable them to break through, while other therapists were actually, who referring people to me, were actually enabling them to stay broken in their shame. Okay. And people, they didn't know they were doing it. Some of the therapists that I work on felt ashamed that they could see what they were doing as therapists after I broke them open. So what's really important to make sure that you do is that when you do communicate these experiences, and that's what I call them, experiences, as opposed to problems or issues or trauma, then you get an opportunity to have that experience be understood, comprehended, loved, and cared for. And that's what shame needs. It doesn't need to be pitied. It doesn't ever need to feel sorry for. It needs to be just understood and loved for what it is.
Yeah. So I'll give you 2 examples that are quite common in working with people that show up. A lot of women who are mothers would have come and said, obviously one-on-one sessions, being ashamed of their thoughts, but they would say, I often feel like regretful that I have kids. And I had moments when I was like, oh my God, wouldn't life be easier without them? And guys, it's like, it's a thought. It doesn't mean that you full stop mean it, but there's weak moments of something happens when you go, oh my God, this is really hard. And a lot of women said, oh, I never, before having kids, I never imagined how it is like, we have this idea of, oh, it's going to be full of love and connection and blah, blah. And then you realize how much hard work it is. So a lot of women said that they felt really ashamed of their thoughts, or resentfulness towards having kids, or sometimes wanting to splash them down the toilet. Or I had people, let's say, who would have older, needing a lot of care and attention parents who were sort of either really unwell or dying. And they had the shameful thoughts, I just want them dead. I just want them, their hard work, they're not the same anymore. And yet there could be people who would say, how dare you, they're your parents. You don't want to judge a thought. It doesn't mean you're going to go and kill them. And yet a lot of people would lie to themselves thinking, oh, I'm a bad daughter to think like that. Oh, I'm a bad, I should feel gratitude to my parents. Yet we never know what situation is. And if, you need to drop all your stuff that you're doing and, someone requires a lot of care and attention and their, hard work, it's normal that you would have a thought like that. It doesn't mean that you're going to act on it, but it's a thought. But people often would just be ashamed of their thoughts. So I think providing understanding and compassion, it's making them feel, hey, it's okay. No one's perfect all the time and thinking perfectly all the time or acting perfectly all the time.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, listeners, is that you've got to understand how someone else perceives it is that very thing. So you got to look and just understand, if someone's going to judge you for having that thought, those thoughts are really normal. It's just it's like being attracted to another person, right? If you're married, like Anja and I are married, and then you're attracted to someone else, that's very, very normal to be that. And then to be thinking, oh, you shouldn't, let's say someone sees you attracted to somebody else and then they shame you for that. Now, both Anja and I remember we were walking down the boardwalk one time in Merimbula. There's this absolutely hot looking fellow running the other direction. And we were both like, oh my God, did you see his eyes? Did you see his face? Did you see his smile? Did you see how amazing he looked? And we both laughed. We're like, imagine people that we know not being able to cope with that sense of just seeing a person and not feeling ashamed of normal physical attraction. And this is really, really essential to understand. We all have our insecurities, and shame is what brings those things up.
Yeah, I love that, Jay. So if you can voice it and not hide it, then again, nothing can be used against you. Yes. And we definitely have that sort of a relationship. And I love that we can be honest about, hey, it's normal to be attracted to different people. It's not going to mean you're going to cheat and go out there. It is normal. You can you can feel something for more people. You can't just go, oh, I committed to you, I only love you, and I can never have any feelings for someone else. It just means you have boundaries not to act on it. But if you actually are communicating it, are honest about it, there's no shame. It was only if you thought bad and, oh, I shouldn't be attracted to anyone else. Or I know people who are so possessive and jealous, they can't even mention, the partner couldn't even say that Angelina Jolie is sexy and she's a bloody movie star that no one's going to ever meet. And or we need to pretend that my partner is the only sexy woman in the world. I mean, bullshit. Yeah, sorry. We can, because obviously that, there's lots of attractive people that we're going to find, or either we call it as, or we're going to lie to people or to ourselves.
100%. So, Anja, thank you for jumping on Uncovered. This is a really important part of learning around shame. So, for you guys who are listening right now, if you're feeling like you're in this place where you really need the help, come and jump on a call with us so we can actually have a chat to you about the Academy. We are brilliant at working with the things that are uncovered, that we can uncover to help you break through your paradigms where you're feeling stuck. And it's basically a simple chat. All we do is we chat to you and we see if we're a fit. And this is the best opportunity to see if this has really caught your eye. Also, please like and share this so people can have a little bit of an idea around what shame is. It's brilliant, it's beautiful, and it's magical, and it brings your best self forward, as Anja has communicated in this podcast. So thank you, Anja, for jumping on and Uncover today, and hope you guys have enjoyed this one.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and Also, our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.